chemical versus physical. This is section 2 in your Science Focus 9 textbook, which is page 99 to 105. Changes in matter. We can have properties that are physical or chemical. Matter can change from one form to another to create new materials, and changes in matter are either considered physical or chemical. A physical change is when a substance changes in form but not in chemical composition. No new substances are formed, and these can usually be reversed. So a change in state is a good example of this. If we looked at water, water as a solid is ice, but on a molecular level, it's still H2O. Water as a liquid, of course, is known as water. It's still H2O. Water vapor is, of course, still H2O. So no matter what state we look at, we still have the same chemical composition. The ratio of hydrogens to oxygens have not changed throughout any of this. So no new substance was formed, and it can be reversed. We can turn water vapor back into water and water into ice. A chemical change creates one or more new substances. It is difficult or impossible to reverse. So for instance, burning paper, leaves turning color. When we burn something, we have that compound and oxygen. And typically, as long as this is a hydrocarbon, so something like propane, we're going to make CO2 and water vapor. Now you can see that these are not the same chemical composition. We have oxygen by itself, and now we've made a compound with oxygen. So again, we've taken our original chemical formula and we've altered it into new products, and it is pretty much impossible to return those to propane and oxygen again. Evidence of a chemical change. Physical change is pretty easy to recognize, but a chemical change can be a little bit tricky. So if two or more of the following observations can be made, it has likely been a chemical change. So if heat is produced or absorbed, so if heat is produced, something feels warm, like a fire. If it is absorbed, it feels cool. So for instance, when you break open or shake up a cool pack, like an ice pack, it is absorbing heat. That's what's making it feel cold. The starting material is used up, so it's gone. There is a change in color. Gas is produced, or you see bubbles if it was a solution. A precipitate is formed. A precipitate is a solid that doesn't dissolve. So if we were looking at a solution and we have a precipitate, we will see the solid sitting at the bottom of our solution. A material with new properties is produced. So those are new physical properties or chemical properties. And the change is difficult to reverse, like burning or leaves changing color. Properties are characteristic ways in which a substance behaves. So we were looking at changes, applying some sort of change to something, but properties are as is. So the strength of ice on a skating rink is a property of the ice, the smooth surface of writing paper, the taste of something. Properties can change though. The ice can melt and lose its ability to support skaters. The paper can burn and become useless for writing. Chlorinated water left overnight can lose its strong taste. So properties can shift. A physical property is any property that can be observed without forming a new substance. It can be seen through direct observation. So you can see a physical property with your eyeballs. There's two types of physical properties. There's qualitative, which are characteristics that can be described but not measured. We typically don't measure color, texture, taste, smell, the state of something, the shape of something. So the crystal shape, which could be seen on an atomic level, so how atoms are connected. The malleability, which is how much it can be shaped or how it can be shaped, like sculpted, hammered, without breaking. And ductility is that something can be stretched into a thin wire. So these are all properties that can be described but not measured. Something has this color or it doesn't. It has this texture or it doesn't. A quantitative property is one that can be measured numerically or quantity with units, like a melting or a boiling point. I can measure when something melts and when it boils. Typically, in Canada, we would do that with degrees Celsius. Density is something we can measure with units. Viscosity has some very interesting units. Solubility is how much something will dissolve. And the conductivity of something, it can be electrical conductivity or a heat conductivity. And again, these are two properties we could actually measure. Chemical properties are any property that describes how a substance reacts with another substance when forming something new. Okay, so one thing and another make something different. Okay, and it could be C, could be C and D, could be C and D and E. It doesn't matter how many products we have, but just how this compound reacts with anything else. Okay, B could be oxygen. It could be water. What happens when we expose something to oxygen? Something like iron. Well, we get rust. What happens when we expose something like sodium metal to water? We get an explosive reaction. So we can measure these properties and we call them chemical properties because they were only evident once I added something to it. So examples of chemical properties are reactions with water, air, pure oxygen, acids, or other pure substances. The list could go on, but these are some really common ones. Something's toxicity is a chemical property. It's only toxic because we've ingested it and it starts to react with the cells in our body. Something's stability, whether it breaks down over time. So some compounds have a very short shelf life because they will continuously break down. Other options could be things that are radioactive or like uranium is used because it continuously breaks down and has this nuclear chemical reaction. Combustibility, how well or quickly it lights on fire because that's the substance itself, and oxygen, creating some new products. To practice, complete the learning guide for this section. There is some additional practice in your textbook if you would like to complete it. Again, I don't mark your textbook questions. I do take a look at your learning guide.